Removing these blemishes is quick and easy using the healing brush. Select the healing brush from the toolbox and adjust the brush size from the options bar to a size slightly bigger than the blemish. You can zoom in on the area for better editing. Hold down the Alt key and you'll notice the cursor changes. This selects the replication origin. Because we want the skin to blend perfectly, set the origin to an area of skin close to the area we are retouching. Then, just paint over the blemish. Photoshop automatically blends the area seamlessly. A similar result can be reached using the Clone Stamp tool. Select the Clone Stamp tool from the toolbox and Alt-click to set its origin. The Clone Stamp literally clones part of the image. Wherever the origin is set to, add your brush point. Because skin is fairly neutral, we can select an origin point of a similar shade of skin and paint over the blemish. Of course, the Clone Stamp tool can be used for a lot more than this, and we'll look at some other examples of where you might want to use it later on. The Patch tool will duplicate a selection of the image and match it to its surroundings. To use the Patch tool, first draw around the area you want to retouch by clicking and holding the mouse button while you drag, the same way as you would if you were making a selection using the freehand lasso tool. This creates a patch. Once you have created your patch, click and drag in the middle of the patch, and try to match the destination as closely as possible with the original source material. Once you have found a near enough match, release the mouse button, and Photoshop will match the lighting and texture to its surroundings. To adjust the overall color and tonal balance of an image, you can either use color balance controls, the level controls, or the curve controls, all located on the Adjustments submenu accessed from the Image menu. You can also apply these adjustments as adjustment layers. Adjustment layers are special layers which alter the color and tonal balance of all the layers beneath them. Because they are layers, they can be reordered, hidden, changed in terms of opacity and blending modes, and be altered using masks. You can even alter the settings of the adjustment layer after you have created it. To create an adjustment layer, click on the New Adjustment Layer icon on the Layers palette. A pop-up menu gives you the option to choose what kind of adjustment takes place. What we'll do first is darken the sky using a color gradient adjustment layer. The following window gives us options to change the gradient type, style, choose an angle, scale, reverse the gradient, dither the gradient to give a smoother blend of color, and an Align with Layer option. Let's change the color of the gradient to a very dark purple and reverse the gradient so that it blends into the horizon. Let's adjust the tonal balance by using levels. Create a Levels adjustment layer. The Levels options box lets you adjust the intensity of the image's shadows, midtones, and highlights using the sliders. A histogram displays the current intensity information. You can adjust levels individually for each of the red, green, and blue channels in an RGB image, or adjust all channels together by selecting the RGB composite channel. Dragging the sliders shows the adjustments being made. To make the dark colors more intense, drag the shadow intensity slider to the right. To make the highlights or light colors more intense, drag the highlight slider to the left. To alter the midtones, drag the midtones slider either left or right, depending on whether you want them darker or lighter. Let's add a beam of light from the lighthouse. Select the paintbrush tool from the toolbox and create a new layer for the light beam. Hold down Shift to constrict the paintbrush to a straight line. Make sure the size of the paintbrush is only as big as the light on top of the lighthouse. We'll want the light beam to fade into the distance, so we can use a motion blur filter to simulate this. To apply the motion blur filter, choose Filter from the menu bar, Blur, Motion Blur. Choose a horizontal angle and set the blur distance. Press OK to apply the filter. The light beam would gradually increase in size as the light scatters, so we'll stretch the brush stroke using the transform tools. You can transform layers or selections using these transform tools. Let's taper the point of this light beam. Open the Edit menu on the menu bar and choose Transform, Distort. A box is drawn around the light beam with handles for manipulating its shape. Taper the light beam by dragging the handles of the transform box. You can apply the transformation by pressing Enter or by clicking on the Commit button on the options bar. You can cancel the transformation by pressing Escape on the keyboard or by pressing the cross or cancel button on the options bar. Move the light beam back into place by using the Move tool from the toolbox. To create another light beam on the other side, we'll duplicate the layer by right-clicking on the layer in the Layers palette and selecting Duplicate Layer. We'll flip this layer horizontally by choosing Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Move the layer into place using the Move tool. Let's colorize the image to give the image a nighttime appearance. Create a new adjustment layer and choose the Hue Saturation adjustment. The Hue Saturation window opens. Hue refers to the color of the light that is reflected through an object. Experiment with the Hue slider to alter the colors in an image. Saturation, sometimes referred to as chroma, is the strength of the color. An image that is desaturated doesn't have very strong colors, to the point of being like a grayscale image. The lightness slider changes the brightness of the image. At the bottom of the window is a checkbox for Colorize mode. This mode allows you to apply an overall tint to the image. Enable Colorize mode and adjust the hue so that the image has a dark blue tint. Press OK to create the adjustment layer. To create a nighttime look, we must change how the adjustment layer interacts with the colors in the layers beneath it. Select Multiply from the Blending Modes drop-down menu on the Layers palette. Now, we'll add some stars from another image and composite the two images together. I have opened a photograph of a starry sky. Let's copy this into our lighthouse image. Select the whole image by pressing Ctrl and A or choosing All from the Select menu. Copy the image by choosing Edit, Copy, or by pressing Ctrl and C. Go back to our lighthouse image by using the Window menu. Choose Edit, Paste, or press Ctrl and V to paste the image onto a new layer. We can better fit the image to the sky by performing a simple rotation. Because we only want to rotate that layer, choose Edit, Transform, Rotate 90 degrees clockwise. The transform functions only act on the currently selected layer. The image of the stars doesn't quite fit with the whole sky. We could use the transform function to stretch the image to make it fit, or we could clone part of the image to paint in the rest of the sky. Select the Clone Stamp tool from the toolbox and Alt-click to set its origin. Choose a large, soft brush from the Brush menu on the Options bar and define the origin. Start painting in the sky with stars. You might need to hide the palettes and toolbox while you are working. Just press Tab to toggle the toolbox and palettes on or off. We can now blend the images together using a blending mode. Choose Screen mode from the Blending Modes drop-down menu on the Layers palette. We should reorder the layers so that the stars are affected by the Hue Saturation Adjustment layer. Click on the Stars layer and drag it below the Hue Saturation Adjustment layer. You may find the stars are too bright, so adjust the opacity slider to a more realistic level. The stars would fade as they get closer to the horizon, so we'll create a layer mask to simulate this effect. Create a layer mask by clicking on the Add Layer Mask icon on the Layers palette. Layer masks are useful for protecting parts of the layer. Photoshop treats white areas as completely unmasked and black areas as completely masked. The varying shades of grey represent partially masked areas. A white to black gradient will have the start of the gradient unmasked and gradually mask the rest of the image as the gradient fades to white. Select the Gradient Fill tool from the toolbox and click and drag straight down to the horizon to create a gradient fill. You can see that we are currently editing the layer mask because the layer mask thumbnail is highlighted in the layers palette. To return to editing the layer itself, click on the layer thumbnail in the layers palette. Let's apply a lens flare filter to the image. Applying a filter only affects the currently selected layer. So if we want a lens flare filter to appear over the top of the lighthouse, we can either apply the filter to a new black layer and choose the correct blending mode, or we can apply the filter to the layer that contains the lighthouse image. We'll apply the filter to a black layer, as this gives us more blending options. Create a new layer and fill it with black. Open the filter menu and choose Render, Lens Flare. We have controls to position the lens flare, adjust the type of lens, and the intensity of the flare. Press OK to render the lens flare. Choose a blending mode for the layer. Here, the blending mode is set to Screen. You can use the Dodge and Burn tools to alter the tonal balance of an image. The terms come from photographers' darkroom techniques. Dodging part of an image used to mean covering it up so that it wasn't exposed to light. Therefore, the photograph didn't develop as much. This appeared to make the image lighter. Burning part of a photograph meant exposing part of the photograph to light longer than the rest of the photograph. This overexposes that part of the photo and makes the colors darker. You can use the Dodge and Burn tools in Photoshop in the same way. These tools are great for adding highlights or creating shadows, as well as lightening or darkening specific parts of the image. Select the Burn tool from the toolbox. You can set the intensity of the tool by adjusting its exposure slider on the options bar. You can also select whether or not you affect the shadows, midtones, or highlights of the image, and whether or not the tool takes on airbrush capabilities, allowing you to apply gradual tones to the image. Finally, we'll adjust the framing of the image by using the Crop tool from the toolbox. Cropping an image means removing portions of a canvas to create focus or improve composition. Drag the Crop tool like you are making a rectangular selection. You can also enter dimensions and a resolution manually by using the values on the options bar. You can move the crop selection, scale it, and rotate it by using the handles on the crop selection box. Once you are happy with the framing of the picture, press Enter to apply the crop, or click on the Commit button on the options bar.